This is Daniel from iApologia.com. Today I want to bring to you a interview I did with a former Muslim named Sameed Osman. Very interesting guy, very interesting story. I think you'll be quite intrigued by the ups and downs, by the near-death experiences he had, and by the visions and dreams that he had of Jesus himself, like many other former Muslims have. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So, can you just tell us your story of coming to Christ from Islam?
Oh boy. Where do I start? Well, I am the oldest of 5 kids. We spent most of our lives in Saudi Arabia. I was born in India, but my dad moved to Saudi when I was about, we all moved about when I was about 1 year old. And so, yeah, it was really different. We grew up in a very conservative, very strong Islamic family. And I mean, just to give you an example, I started learning about Islam even before I went to school. I started learning Arabic before I spoke English. And, on a day-to-day basis, even the way that my life was, you wake up and you say a prayer. You say a prayer before you put on a shirt. You say a prayer before you eat. Say a prayer before you go into the bathroom. It's just, my whole life was so centered around Islam, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, we were in Saudi. Secondly, we followed the Salafi sect, which is one of the most conservative sects. And that's the sect of Islam that Saudi Arabia follows within the Sunni system. But then, other than that, I also had this teacher who would come and who would basically help me learn about Islam. So, Saturday we would do the Quran, Sunday we would do Hadith, Monday we would do dua or prayer in Arabic. So he would basically, and then he would teach me fiqh, which is the rulings and the theology and the life of Muhammad. And I basically spent my whole life learning. And I mean, he wasn't also just any other normal teacher. He was actually one of those people who was approved by the Shura Council and was employed by the Saudi government during Hajj, which is their pilgrimage. And he would lead groups of people and he would tell them what Islam was. He would walk them through the different things of the Hajj, the different rituals of the Hajj. And he would, he was one of those people who was actually, his books were approved by the Shura Council, which is the council of the scholars in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, that's kind of what my life looked like growing up. And then I remember about 11 or 12, I Googled what is the most common religion in the world, and it came back as Christianity. And I was very shocked. I was surprised, and I was angry. I thought Islam was the most common religion. That's what I was told by my teachers, by my elders, and that was the day I think I decided that I was going to change that. I decided that things were going to be different, and I started learning about Christianity. I started following Ahmed Didat. I started following Zakir Naik. We would play the Peace TV as his TV channel, and our house would it would be going on our television all the time. We would watch his speeches and different things. And then the more I grew, the more I started getting books and learning about Islam, learning about Christianity. The only thing I didn't do was read the Bible itself, because that's the thing you'll notice within a lot of Muslims when you talk to them. If you ask them, have you read the Bible? A lot of them will say no, because, it's just something it's not recommended for you to read by any of the teachers, any of your scholars, the imams. They'll say, no, you don't have to. They keep you very sheltered because they don't want you to read the Bible. So, basically that was, tip of the iceberg, glimpse into where I came from. And then after I got my bachelor's, I decided I wanted to get a master's. So I, told my parents I wanted to go to America and get my master's and started applying to different schools. And one of the main reasons I think I chose America was it wasn't just that I wanted to get a master's and I knew the schools are incredible, but I also knew this was a Christian nation and I wanted to talk to Christians, and I knew if somehow I could make America into an Islamic country, everybody else in the world would follow. So that was kind of my thinking. That was kind of what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be the greatest Islamic apologist in the world, and I, was trying, reading, learning, going to different places, learning from different teachers, and basically, So long story short, I come to Bradley and for my master's, and within, I think, 2 or 3 days, I run into a Christian group, which would meet just 2 doors down from the Islamic Center, the MSA. And I mean, I came to America on the 22nd. That same Friday, they asked if I would lead their first Friday prayers as their imam. So immediately I was asked to lead the Friday prayers. I started doing the responsibilities of an imam. And so along with all of that, we had our orientation, and at the orientation we got to meet different student groups that were on campus. And I think God has a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. So right next to our Muslim student association was the Christians table, and I remember looking over and I said fresh meat, and I walked over and I said hi. I started talking to them. I asked them what it was. They told us we're a Christian group, we're Christ ambassadors, and you're welcome to come, you're welcome to join, you're welcome to hang out. And I was very clear. I talked to them and I said, hey, I'm a Muslim, and I'm not just going to come to have fun, but if you guys are open to it, I would love to tell you about Islam, and fine, you guys can tell me about Jesus too. Because in my head, I had heard everything I needed to know about Jesus, to know about Christianity, and I was just way too overconfident. And they just smiled and they were like, that would be fine, please come. So, long story short, after a few weeks later, they invited me to their activities, and I started going. And while I would have fun, I would still, talk to the pastor, the people who were there, and I would ask them questions. They would ask me questions, and one of the patterns I started noticing was they would say, "This is out of context," and it would be helpful to understand that the whole Quran is out of context. When you read the Quran, you're going to be very confused because it talks about Moses, and 3 verses later, it's talking about the Day of Judgment. 5 verses later, it's talking about Noah. So everything is mishmashed. There are some parts of the Quran that have a full story. For example, Surah Nuh, chapter Noah, it's got parts of, almost complete parts of Noah's story. But most of the Quran is jumbled. So
even from surah to surah,
everything is just very transitional.
You read one, it's not, sequential all the
it's
time.
Not. It is not.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the way that the Quran came down, like the first surah that came down, Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq, Surah Iqra, it was chapter 96, but that was the one that came down first. So like the way the Quran came down, the way it was put together, everything, it's, it's a whole different deal. We don't want to poke that bear, but basically that's what they started telling me, and I was like, okay. In my head, I thought they were using that as a cop-out. So I said, well, I think if I just read the Bible, I can shut them up. Mm-hmm. That's all I need to do is read the Bible. And I did. I got myself a New Testament. I started reading, and I went to the first verse, my Father is greater than I. It's very clear. Jesus said, my Father is greater. How can, if Jesus is less than the Father, how can they both be God? So, the Trinity, I just destroyed the Trinity argument. Started reading the passage. Okay, I'm in the Father and the Father is in me. Like, something's not making sense. All right, well, Jesus says, why do you call me good? Turn to that chapter, start reading it. Okay. As I saw my arguments falling to the ground, I also started noticing that the things that I denied about Jesus were all in there. Jesus is very clearly claiming to be God. And I think if you, as a reader, are reading the Bible and can't see that Jesus is claiming very clearly to be God, you're not being honest with yourself. Because even as a Muslim, when I read it, I was honestly shocked and sort of offended at Jesus himself. I was like, well, why would he say that? And obviously my first argument that I was taught was the Bible has changed. So I said, okay, well, I know the Bible has changed, but when I tell that to these people, they ask for proof. So all I have to do is do some research and look into the Quran. And while I'm doing this for the Bible, I can do the exact same thing for the Quran. And if I can show that Bible doesn't stand the test and the Quran does, my argument's sealed. Mm-hmm. Did not work that way. I started doing it. I started reading the Quran, the history of the Quran, how it came down, where the first revelation was, who put it together, what was the last copy we have, what's the difference between the oldest manuscript and the revelation, and what's the age difference between the number of years. I'm telling you, the Quran just started falling apart. Every argument.
Is that, like 100 years, right?
Couple hundred years. Yeah. The top copy that we have, there's 200 years between the last version. And it's so interesting because the Quran, when it was written, the way it was spread, it was not under persecution. It was under all these Islamic rulers who held power. So even the way that the Quran was written down was not on old parchments. It was written down in gold. It was written down on cloth. It was written down on cowhide. It was written down on things that could hold it together.
So do we have complete copies of the Quran then from 200 years post Muhammad?
Well,
or is it just partial?
There's like partial parchments here and there, but like the
kind
full,
of like the Bible's the same way that post.
Right.
You don't have. I mean, we have biblical manuscripts that are 100 years, 120 years post Christ, but they're not the full manuscript itself. It's just bits and parts.
Right. Well, the full. I think the full, and I could be completely off on the years, but I think the approximate time that they have the full manuscript of the Quran itself is about 400 years.
Oh,
wow. Where they have like the first full manuscript, and there's 7 existing full manuscripts of the Quran. And then the reason for that is because it was not under persecution. It was spread under all these leaders and rulers who spent hundreds and thousands of dollars, I'll just use that, for the propagation of the Quran. That was not the case for the Bible, but the Bible has more existing manuscripts that you can cross-reference, you can go back and see versus the Quran. And secondly, I know my thought was, if Allah promised that he's going to protect the Quran, what stopped him from not protecting his own word before the Quran? And why would God give a set of commandments in the Old Testament, say that in the New Testament there's a new covenant, and then go back again? Because a lot of the Quran is very similar to the Old Testament. Parts of it some of it have different narratives, but a lot of the Quran is very similar to the Old Testament. So those kind of questions started coming to my mind. When Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," he is the truth. And the more I would read the Bible, the more Quran started bothering me about the inconsistencies. And so naturally I turned towards Allah and I started, asking and begging him for help. I said, I'm doing this for you, And I remember, I'll come back to that later, but I remember I was on my face. I would pray the tahajjud, which is the prayer after everybody goes to bed. It's like past midnight, very close to the morning prayer. You wake up in the last third of the night and you pray. And the hadith, it says Allah comes down to the last heaven and it says, "Is there any son of Adam that wants to ask me anything? Ask and I will give." So I would wake up at that time and I would beg and beg and beg, and I would fast during the day. I would read my Quran, I would read, and I was trying to do everything that I could to find that peace, but I was just completely torn. And that's when Jesus started giving dreams. And I know a lot of people wonder, why do Muslims get all these dreams? It's a very interesting phenomenon when you see Muslims getting all these dreams of a man in white.
Especially in the West here, we don't dreams don't really seem to, you don't hear a lot. I mean, there are people that get dreams, but it doesn't seem to be.
It's not a lot of significance.
The significance and the amount. I mean, you don't hear people talking about part of their conversion story like, oh, I had this dream. I mean, there are people,
right?
But it's rare,
right?
Compared to Islam, it seems like there's a lot of people coming out of Islam, and former Muslims that have had dreams. And stuff like that. So.
And I mean, even on YouTube, when you read those 5 stories, what's those? I'm forgetting the 5 stories that were done by Voice of the Martyrs. More Than Dreams, the series More Than Dreams. It's 5 stories of 5 Muslims in different countries. Africa, Iran, and there's 3 more countries, Indonesia. And so all 5 stories have a part in there where this man in white comes and says, Ana Isa, I am Jesus. I am Jesus Christ and I love you. Or I'm Jesus Christ and I'm here for you. I'm Jesus Christ, I'm going to protect you. So I think one of the main reasons is because God knows and speaks every person's language. And Muslims put a lot of importance in dreams because Muslims don't believe that God, like all communication from God was closed after Muhammad. Like God's last revelation was the Quran. He gave that last revelation and then the door was sealed. There's no more communication from God. But the one way that God will still speak to you is through a dream. And that's what they do. Like, when they need direction from God, they will pray. Istikhara, Salatul Istikhara. This is what it's called. But they'll pray 2 units of prayer, and then they have the special prayer in Arabic, and they'll pray that prayer, and then state what they need or what they need direction from God, and they'll go to bed expecting a dream. Not always, but most of the times they expect to see a dream in which God gives them a direction. They'll especially do that when they're either getting married or buying a big purchase or something that they need direction on, buying a house. So anyway, I think that's why a lot of Muslims see those dreams. Is because God knows dreams are important to them, and they place that much. They place a lot of stress on dreams. So when they see somebody in their dreams, a man in white, it's like, okay, who was that, and why did I see a dream of that? Because I just prayed and I bound Satan and I asked Allah to give me direction. I'm pretty sure Allah is not going to send Jesus and to tell me in the dream that he's God, so what's going on? So anyway, so that's what started happening with me. I had a series of many dreams, but one of the first dreams I remember was I walked into this mosque, and as soon as I walked in, there was all these people who were sitting, and they were facing the front, and there was this one man sitting up there, and I went and sat right in front of him, and he was sitting like his knees were folded like this, and I sat like this. I was like right face to face. And I immediately recognized he was Ali bin Abi Talib. He was the 4th caliph, Muhammad's cousin, who married Muhammad's daughter. In my dream, I knew it was him. So I looked at him and I said, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, O leader of the believers. And he was famous for having a double-pointed sword. It was a sword that came and it had 2 points in the front. And he drew his sword, and it was the same sword in the dream. He handed it over to me, and he said, I want you to take charge from me. I want you to lead the ummah, the people. And in my dream, I saw the sword, and I saw out of the handle, there was blood coming out of it. There was just blood running down the sword. And something didn't feel right. So I looked at him and I said, thank you for the honor, but I don't think I want to I want to do this. I don't want to be a part of this. And I rose up and walked out of the mosque, and I woke up and I was very disturbed because that was the greatest honor any Muslim could have asked for, was to lead the ummah, to be the be the leader. So that really kept bothering me, and I think 2 days later I saw another dream, and in that dream I walked into this room. It was a funeral, and I walked up to see who died, and it was me. I was dead, and I was laying there. Everybody around me kept saying he's dead. They take me long to bury me, and I'm inside the grave, inside my casket, and I'm really scared, and I'm banging, and I'm saying, let me out, I'm not dead, I'm not dead. And then in my dream, I say, God help me. And this light from heaven comes down, breaks open the casket, lifts me up into the air, and I'm just like up in the heavens, and I wake up. And I was like, what does it mean that I'm dead? Like, what was the meaning of that dream? And I actually called my uncle in India, and I asked him, and he was like, don't worry about it. It's just a stupid dream. no big deal. I asked people over here at the mosque, and they said the same thing. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just doesn't mean anything. It means you're going to live a long life. I was like, it didn't feel like that. You know, it was very clear that I was dead. Went about doing my own life. In my heart, I thought God was mad at me because I was looking into the Bible and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, long story short, I just, sort of laid that low, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to read the Bible a little bit more now. I'm just going to focus on Islam. And then a few months later, I had another dream. And at this time, I was reading more Quran, I was fasting more, I was praying more, all of these. And I see this dream where I get into a car, it drives me to this house. I walk out, it's this huge mansion. I walk into this huge building, and I see there's hundreds and thousands of rooms. I walk into each room, I still remember the first room I saw. The theme of the room was horses. I love horses. So it's just, love riding them, love them as animals. Just something about them just is very intriguing to me. So, and the whole room was themed around horses. The blankets, the pictures, everything was horses. And then there's the next room was flowers. Basically, I walked through the whole house, looked through different rooms, and then I went to the top floor. And on that one, there was no more rooms, but there's just one long table. On that table, there was all these different, all kinds of foods being prepared, being put on, and there's all these plates, and in front of each plate is a name of the person going to sit. And instead of the chair, there's a throne, and there's all these thrones being set. There's all these plates and all these names. My first instinct was to go out and look at the first name, second, third. I ran around the whole table. I could not find my name. And in my dream, I fell on my knees and I was crying. And I said, I want to sit at this table. And I heard my name. I turned around. And there's this white robe. It was a beautiful robe. And on that robe, I saw my name. I said, oh, something finally for me. And I went to touch it, but I couldn't grab it because it was in this glass case. And I heard a voice from behind me, this booming voice that said, not yet. And then I woke up. And I was really scared. I didn't know what was going on. I called my imams again and my uncle. They all were like, that's a stupid dream. Don't worry about it. We'll be praying for you. You're going through a rough patch or something like that. And I was like, I don't know what you guys are, thinking, but this is very real. It was like I was in that dream. So, long story short, a couple days ago, after I'm at that, back at the Christian house, and I'm talking to the pastor, and I was just thinking, and I was like, what, let me ask and see if he knows anything. So I asked him, and I said, hey, I saw this dream. Would you be able to help me with it? And he was like, yeah, tell me the dream. So I start telling him my dream, and he starts getting excited, and he's freaking out. I was like, what is going on? I honestly thought he ate some of those brownies. I was like, are you high? What's going on? And he's like, Sameed, your dream's right out of the Bible. I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, it is. Let me show you. And he opens the book, and Jesus saying, in my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare them for you. If it was not so, I would not have told you. And then he returns and he says, look, it's the marriage supper of the Lamb. It says, many are invited, but only few come, because you have to be a believer in Jesus to sit at that table. That's why your name was not there. And then he shows the part where believers are going to be given a white robe. And I was like, oh, yeah, I could not sit at the table. I could not touch the robe. And I was kind of sad, but I was also offended, because one of the things he told me was, you have to be a believer in Christ to go to heaven. And that was so different from what I thought, from what I believed in, and what every Muslim believes in, is that you go to heaven when you do good works, when you earn a spot in heaven. And in my eyes, I was a perfect Muslim. I was never smoked, never gambled, never drank alcohol, never slept with a girl, never dated a girl. I was praying 5 times a day. I was the imam. I was leading all these Islamic activities. So in my head, I was a good candidate to go to heaven. And then this guy comes along and says, doesn't matter what you're doing, you need to believe in Jesus to go to heaven. So, that's, I think, I always, it reminds me of that when I talk to people, is a lot of times our pride blinds us from seeing our need for Jesus. And that's what I was in that situation, that's what I was not looking at. So yeah, I mean, after that, I had a billion more dreams. Probably that's an exaggeration, but I had a good about 13, 14 dreams. One dream was just fishing. I woke up, and in my heart, I just heard this one sentence that "Follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men." I was like freaked out. There was nobody in the room. I was like, okay, I'm just going cuckoo. Like, reading the Bible way too much.
Did you pulled that from the Bible in your mind? You're like, Jesus is calling you to be a fisher of men.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Gotcha.
And then, so yeah, there was, different dreams and this and that. And I was, at this point, researching and looking, and after all these things, I was coming to that conclusion. And that's when the whole, it was 3 months before I became a Christian. I was walking down the street. It was still daylight out. And I heard somebody say, "Hey, buddy." So I turned around. This metal pipe comes swinging at my face, hits me on my left side. I fall down, and they start kicking me. They start punching me. And after a good 30 seconds, they run. One of them bit my hand. One of them stepped on my face. So they take me to the hospital. My left eye is damaged, and I can't see out of the left eye. My face is broken in 4 places. Because they bit me, the doctors are testing me for HIV. I've got multiple internal injuries. I'm, bleeding from my eye, nose, mouth. And then they stitched me up, 11 stitches under my eye, and like all this is going on. And the hospital lawyer comes up to me and says, "Hey, the doctors don't think you're going to live through this. You're not going to make through the night. And if you die, how do you want to be buried? There's a chance you can die. And if you die, how do you want to be buried?" I got really scared, and I said, "I don't want to talk about this right now. Can you please leave? All I can tell you is I'm a Muslim." He leaves. They take me to my room. They put a guard outside, a police officer stationed outside to make sure they don't come back to finish the job or whatever. And it was so bad. I remember one of my friends came to the hospital to see me that night. He walked in, he looked at me, and he passed out. He just hit the floor. He had to get 3 stitches because it was so bad. He ended up getting 3 stitches in the hospital. But anyway, it was bad. I was just really scared. And then I was in the room by myself, and I prayed, and I said, "I don't want to die because I don't know if I'm a Muslim or Christian, but I know that Allah or Jesus, one of you is real, and whoever you are, can you please show yourself and heal me?" And as soon as I pray that prayer, I see this white light fill my room. This man walks up to me, stands by my bed. I look at him, I say, "Jesus," and I pass out. That was the whole thing. I woke up the next day. First thing I notice is I can see out of my left eye. I can start seeing things, and I'm shocked. And I call the nurse, and she comes in, and she calls the doctors. The doctors come in. They do their tests, and they come back with the results and everything. And he just says, "Sameed, all we can tell you is that this is a miracle, and you're completely fine. You're completely healed." They had actually scheduled me for a surgery for my face to try to put my bones together, because they said the bones were fractured in the wrong places, and they could set in that way, and they were going to try to set them up right. So they came back and they said, "You're completely healed. There's no fractures anymore." And
just superficial cuts and scars.
Yeah, just all I had was this scar.
Wow.
Like my blood levels were normal. My heart was completely fine. My lungs were completely fine. My fractures were gone, and everything was okay. And they basically said, "You can go home if you want. You're completely okay." And I just sat on my bed, and I was like, "Okay, I know who I saw. I know what I prayed, and I know it was Jesus." So at this point, with all the evidence I already had from my research of the Quran, of the Bible, I basically decided. I basically knew in my head what was right. And at this point, I got that proof of the supernatural being power of God and Jesus being who he said he was. So I think the next 3 months, March, April, and May, February, March, and April, I took about those 3 months to sort of make that final decision, count the cost, mourn a little bit, because I knew once I became a Christian, that was going to be the end of life as I knew. And I was preparing for the worst. I honestly didn't know if someone was going to kill me, if my family was going to do something. So I just, took some time, counted the cost, transitioned out of there. And in May, I was in a small group, and, I just heard that little whisper in my heart again. It says, I want you to be my son. And after the whole small group was done, I went up to the leader and I said, hey, I want to become a Christian. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I want to give my life to Jesus. And he like freaked out and he was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, calm down. Nobody else can know. Because that's the thing is like, you probably won't know a Muslim is coming to accept Jesus 15 minutes before he becomes a Christian. Because we're trained to keep our emotions in, not to tell anyone. We're scared, well, what if I'm wrong about this? I don't want people to, say I was a weak Muslim or all of this. So all this was going on. And I went up to him and I said, I want to give my life to Jesus. And we, him and a couple of other people over there, we went upstairs to a bedroom and I prayed and I said, Jesus, I stood there and I was like, I don't know how to pray. And he was like, well, I can help you. And he like sort of helped me. And then it was almost like this presence of Holy Spirit. It was like, brought me. It's like when Jesus says the Holy Spirit will convict you of your sin. I don't know what came over me, but I just started, repenting of my sin. I was like, Jesus, I'm sorry for fighting you, for blaspheming you, and for all the things I've done. And I just was, one of the most special moments of my life. It was the special moment of my life. I invited Christ into my life, and I said, let's do this until I come see you.
Let's take a quick break here. Please smash that like button. Please share this on social media. Please subscribe to this channel. With that, let's get back to the story.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
that was
that's the short version.
That's the 30-minute. I don't know how long we've been going
about
for.
30 minutes. It's about 30 minutes exactly. Actually.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
Number of things that come to my mind though is that I've heard this story maybe 5-6 times now. I don't know.
Right.
So there's everything is the same. It's just I've heard other stories along with.
There's a lot of
some of the things that stand in my mind.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was interested in is there was a part of the story where I think as you were visiting a doctor and then some representative came in or something like that and helped you get your card so you could stay in the United States. Was that after you became a Christian?
It was right before.
Right before you became. So
Yes.
that's right when you got hit by these guys.
Right.
So that's when you were visiting the doctor for a follow-up.
Yeah.
So can you tell us that story? And
Yeah. Well, I was basically I was in the waiting room and somebody from the, was sitting there and he looked at me and he's like, what happened? So I told him what happened and everything that was going on. And I, shared a little bit about what's going on. And I was kind of like, he was like, well, are you completely fine? And I was like, yeah, I was in the room and this happened. And I was telling him my story and he was like really, really intrigued. And he was like, well, just so you know, it's called like a U visa basically. So he was like, yeah, if you need help, I'd be more than happy to help you. And, he was one of the people who worked with the local congressman. And so I got to call him and, they were incredible. I mean, they really helped me out. They, whatever they could, they could have done to help me and support me. They did. And it was almost miraculous how God knew what was going to happen and planned the whole thing out. Because, I have no doubt in my mind, going back would have been very, there would have been a very bad consequence.
So that visa helped you stay in the United States, which protected you.
Yes. Even staying in the U.S., the story of when I came out, a month and a half after I became a Christian. I was basically in hiding for a couple months before I came out.
Before you get that, can we go back to when you came out, when you left your house?
Right.
Can you go to that and then talk about being in that one building with a bunch of other Christians, and then they called the cops and stuff like that? Is that what you're going?
Yeah.
What happened before, though? When you became a Christian, you went back, grabbed your stuff, and left, right?
Yes.
Can you tell that? Then go tell the story about... That's the kind of control.
Well, I became a Christian. I went home. I packed a bag.
Day, right? That night.
That night. I packed a bag. I came out. I stood on the street, and I looked up, and I said, Jesus, I need a place to stay. I don't have any money on me. I didn't have a job then. I didn't have any savings. I didn't have anything. I literally stood on the street and I said, Jesus, I need a place to stay tonight. Will you please help me? And a few minutes later, there's somebody, like, I was standing there. I was like, right, there's a park right next door. So I went to the park. I was sitting on the bench, and I got a call from one of the friends at church, and they were like, they were like, hey, we heard what happened. Are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm fine. They're like, where are you at? I was like, well, I'm sitting in the park here. They're like, do you have a place to stay? I was like, well, not really. He was like, okay, well, let me call a friend. He's a realtor, landlord. Let's see what we can do. So there's this one street that I would walk on even before I became a Christian, and I would tell myself, I would love to live on this street. The houses are just so beautiful. And so I was sitting there, and he calls me back. He's like, all right, I'm coming to pick you up. I think we have something. So he calls the landlord, and the landlord calls me. He says, hey, I have this one place. Let's go see it. The whole house is still getting constructed, but there's this one room and a bathroom. That's all. It's finished. Everything else is just 2x4s. So I was like, you know what? I'll take whatever you have. So we went over to that house. Once you know it, the house was on that street, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, Jesus, you take care of, like, it's just, little details that he really is, to think that God of the universe would care enough to try to get a house.
Just feel a desire of your heart.
That,
just a little desire of your heart.
Literally, like, the first thing is like almost like a first gift I get. So so I move into that house, and I walk in, and the guy was like, yeah, like, it'd be $500 a month. I was like, you know what? At this point, I'm not sure how we're gonna do that, but we'll figure something out. And he was like, okay. So I moved there. I stayed there. I was still working through my immigration, and it was like about a year before I could start working, because I was like, I don't want to work without my documents and without my work permits. It was about a full year before I could work, and the whole time, Jesus would provide in miraculous ways, like
even rent. You got free rent because you worked there, right?
Right.
He
basically was like, I was staying in the house, so he was like, I told him, I was like, I'm really bored. Do you mind if I work on the house? Mm-hmm. And he was like, sure. Do you know how to work? I was like, yeah. I can figure it out. So I started, doing things, and he was like, well, like, since you are working on the house, like, I'll just it'll just be my gift to you. Like, you just can't stay for free as long as you finish the house. I was like, sounds good. So I stayed there for a whole year.
You had nothing else to do.
I had nothing else to do. So that God took care of that. And then somebody called me 4 weeks later and was like, hey, I got a call from a friend of a friend, and they want to gift you a car. Would you like a free car? And I'm like, would I like a free car?
You're like, what color was it, right, too?
Yeah, because I had a dream about a car that I got, and in my dream, the car was a gray car, and like in my dream, that person told me, you're going to get a car, it's going to be a gray car. So when the person called me, I was like, okay, what color is the car? And they're like, it's a gray Corolla. I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Thank you very much.
That's the one that I dreamed about.
That's the one. So, God provided in so many ways.
This is probably about the time, give or take maybe a few months, when I met you.
Yes.
That he gave your testimony.
Yeah.
And this is a time when where you were staying was secretive. Like, you would not tell anybody.
Knew.
Like, you never told me. I didn't know you very well at that time, but you didn't tell me.
No, I didn't tell anyone.
Because it was so dangerous.
Right.
It was like extremely dangerous. So what happened next was you were with a bunch of Christians at a Christian gathering, right?
Right. I went to that prayer. Church.
The church. Okay.
So
it was a
prayer
church
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I get out of my car. I walk into the church building. Thankfully, the doors locked right behind because it was a smaller church, and they locked the doors. It was a Monday night prayer meeting. Within 15, 20 minutes, the whole house is surrounded by 15 Muslims. They've got, hockey sticks. They've got radios. Everyone's got a radio. They've got a van in the parking lot. And all they're saying is, hey, we want to talk to Sameed, hand him over. And so I'm hiding in this room, and I crank up the window, and I overhear a conversation. And they're saying, how dare you turn his back on Muhammad? We're going to show him what he did. Like, we're going to show him what happens when you do that. So after about 4 hours of trying to talk to them, the pastor went out, and he was talking to them, telling them, like, you guys just need to go. Sameed does not want to talk to you. You just need to go, and they would not go. So we ended up calling the cops, the Peoria Police Department, and they just came and thankful, could not be more thankful to them. They just came with like a SWAT car, or it was like a big van, and they would like canines and stuff, and they just had grouped them all in the front. This one cop car came in the back, and they had me slide, just get into the car. And then they took me to this, another location far away out of the city, and that's where I stayed It was a friend's house, and we stayed there. I stayed there for a while before I came back to that place again. And I mean, even after a long time, I still remember this one time. I drove from a church back to my friend's house, and as soon as I got out of my car, this elder from one of the mosques came running to me, and he started talking, and he was like, "What did you do? Why did you do da 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 da?" It's like, "Well, if you're a real Christian, like, here, can you drink this poison and prove that you're a real Christian?" And I was like, "Well, Muhammad said if you read this prayer of protection and you drink anything or poison or anything, it won't affect you." I was like, "I'm ready to drink it if you are." And he just got really mad, and he was like, "I will see you on the day of judgment when Allah has sentenced you to hell." I was like, "I'm ready to drink it, dude." I'm like, I'm not saying no. I was just really high on faith. I was just gotten saved, so probably not the most wise thing to do is test the Lord, but I was just like, if you want,
he wasn't going to do it anyhow. So.
I mean, I just was like, if you want to test Jesus, I'm ready to, go for it.
Yeah.
A worst case scenario, I'll be in heaven.
Yes.
So, well, best case scenario, well, I guess, dying at that point was, but yeah, so there was like a lot of things. And I mean, even after that, like I would, my Christian friends, one of them, he drove for Uber for a while, and he picked this group of Muslims up, and they were talking, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like, I was part of Chi Alpha," and they were like, "Oh, do you know Sameed?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I know Sameed." And he was like, "Well, you have to tell us where he lives. He owes $10,000. And he was like, "I'm not telling you where he lives."
That's Nathan, right?
Nathan. Yeah. My current roommate.
Yeah.
So, and then there was like other times where, I mean, they just started telling all kinds of stories about me. I remember a while after one of my close friends, he wanted to go out for dinner, and we talked for a little bit, but he was like, "I just want you to know, like, I feel bad because like after you became a Christian, the mosque basically organized this lecture series, and all they did was tell us how terrible you were and how bad of a Muslim you were and all these things." And I was like, that's surprising because I was actually part of the Dawah team, like evangelistic team at the mosque, and I was pretty high up there. So it was just, they hired another imam out of Michigan who was an expert in talking to Christians and students on campus. So they hired him to come and talk to the students here and kind of calm everybody down. And I was like, I was,
they grew all about just me, like.
Yeah, I know. I was shocked, but I was also like, this is funny.
Yeah.
I loved watching Jason Bourne, so I was like, yeah, I'm living Jason Bourne life, right? Hiding, trying to make sure people aren't following me around, and
yes,
yeah.
So, was there any other part of that? Because I think there's another story I was interested in hearing too.
Yeah.
And I think when you go back a little bit, this is when you had you were driving someplace and you had some sort of accident.
Oh yeah, this was before.
This is before you became a Christian, though,
yes,
right?
This was before I became a Christian.
Where
that was October.
So okay.
Yeah, so it was like I was coming back from a fall harvest party, whatever, and I was driving. And that night at the harvest party, Pastor Dale was preaching, and he said, I don't remember any of it. He was really good at reaching out to students because that was what he did his whole life. But he said, if you do die tonight, and there's even a slight chance that Jesus is the person you will meet, what will you tell him? Why didn't you follow him? Is it because you didn't even research, you didn't even want to find him, or was it something that you did look into and just weren't happy about? Like, at least give him a chance. Look, try to find who Jesus is, and if you do see him, and if you do die tonight, what will you tell him? So I was going home, and I was thinking about that, and I was like, you know what? If there's even a possibility, and this was after my big dream of the house and everything, I said, even if there is a possibility of Jesus, what will I tell him? Like, did I even give him a chance? Did I look into who he is? It's kind of like saying, I have the best pizza in the world. Well, did you try every other pizza in the world? You can't just make that claim unless you actually did. So I was like, well, I mean, so I was thinking about that, and I was driving home, and I mean, I was in this old dinky Kia, this Jeep from the other side. I'm going 50, 55. He's going about 60, 70 miles an hour. He swerves into my lane, and we just collide head on. I mean, my car was crumpled like a can. You've seen pictures of the car. It was just, the front was in line with the windshield. The engine was just completely destroyed. His car was completely destroyed. We took down one of those signposts. And yeah, I mean, the airbags somehow came on. It was a miracle in that old car. But I was sitting on the side of the road, and the fire department and stuff came in. They were like, "Where's the people?" Somebody like, "Did they take him to the hospital? Where's the driver? Who's the driver?" And I was like, "Oh, it's me." And he just looked at me and he was like, "You're very lucky because we've seen these kind of accidents, and people don't walk out of these alive." And that night, I knew, I was like, well, I need to figure out who Jesus is, because if I don't really give him a chance, or if I don't even try to see, well, unless I was thinking I can just prove him wrong and move on with my life. So if I really am following the truth, what do I have to be afraid about? And that was the thing I saw in Christians who, not every Christian, but Christians who know what they believe in, Christians who spend time with Jesus, who read their Bibles, who actually know what they're following, is they have this weird sense of confidence that's so attractive, because they know it's the truth, and it's not because their parents have told them so. It's not because they were just born in a house or in a Christian home and went to Sunday school, but they actually followed and listened to who Jesus was, because they have that, not just head knowledge, they have that experience with him, they've been through situations with him. It's all that that brings you confidence. I mean, I remember as the more I walk with Jesus, the more I'm not just growing confidence about this life, but the afterlife. I'm like, yeah, like, Paul, death, where is your sting? Grave, where is your victory? There's no fear. Because if you ever go to a Muslim funeral, it will open your eyes. They're crying and wailing, and it could be the most pious person. Muhammad himself, the prophet, he said, I ask Allah to forgive me more than 70 times a day. If the prophet himself is not sure about his own forgiveness, what chance does a follower have? Yeah. Whereas Jesus' death and resurrection is so not just a faith-based belief, but proven in history, that, I think that's like one of the coolest thing ever. Is I've seen, Mike Licona debate Shabir Ali, and Muslims can fight back on all these things, but I think that's the one thing that Muslims cannot answer, is because there's not just this faith-based belief, but historically it is such a strongly proven point that if Jesus did die on the cross, game over. He's the truth. And so, yeah. So
anyway. Muslims in general are not against Jesus as a historical figure.
Right.
They're against him they're against the idea that he's God.
Yes. And he died on the cross.
He died on the cross and rose again the third day.
That was the Quran teaches. It says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا سَلَبُوهُ فَإِنْ كَانَ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. He was neither killed nor was he crucified, but it was made to appear so.
Gotcha.
So that's what they're against. Actually, if you hear Zakir Naik, he's got a very famous thing that he says. He says Muslims are more Christians than Christians themselves. The Bible says don't eat pork. Muslims don't eat pork. Christians eat pork. The Bible says do not drink alcohol. Christians don't drink alcohol. Muslims don't drink alcohol. So he was like, if you look at that, we're more Muslim than Christians themselves, which is against false argument, because the Bible also says don't eat camel, and Muhammad ate camel. So if you're eating pork, not eating pork but eating camel, why do you get to choose?
Take things out of context.
Right, just taking things out of context.
Yeah.
Bible says don't eat rabbit or hare.
Yeah.
Muslims eat hare.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, why are you not eating pork but eating camel? Like, how does that justify?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So anyway, it's just those things where Muslims will make all kinds of false claims, and interestingly enough, Muslims are waiting for the coming of Christ. They believe Jesus is coming again. They believe he's going to lead the Muslim army. The hadith says the Islamic army is going to surround Jerusalem, and it's going to be the time for Asr. This is the third prayer, the evening prayer. And Jesus is going to descend on clouds. He's going to come, lead them in that prayer, and then lead the Islamic army into Jerusalem. He's going to destroy the cross, kill all the pigs, and then he's going to establish a Muslim, Muslim rule all over the world. He's going to rule for 40 years, and then he's going to die. He's going to marry, he's going to have kids, and once he dies, they have a grave spot for him in Medina by the feet of Muhammad, where they believe they're going to bury Jesus once he dies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many things, but maybe we've been going for about 45, 50 minutes
Yeah.
now. But let's finish up with something that I think is a very important topic, and that is a lot of times in the West, we like, oh, just convert to Christianity, or if so-and-so believes this religion or that religion, it's like, it's a big deal in one sense, but no one's going to, like, you're talking about being from Islam, people were threatening to kill you.
Right.
Like, literally.
Right.
You're afraid of your life.
Mm-hmm.
If someone would convert away from Christianity, we wouldn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be very negative, would be sad, but we wouldn't go kill that person either.
Right,
We would
right.
definitely try to love them as much as we can
Right.
to bring them back to repentance to Christ. But I think one thing that we miss as well is the cost. You know, when Jesus says, count the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just a little bit of background about who you were? Whatever you can tell me. If you can't give me a lot of details, fine. Just kind of like a little bit about your family, a little bit.
Well,
kind of like what responsibilities you would have had if you would have stayed in Islam, and what would happen now if you'd ever go back to claim your heritage,
Right.
or your rightful place in the family.
Right. Well, I won't give a lot of names or any
Don't give
names or
names,
details,
yeah.
but
Just give
I'll just give you the brief of what it was. So I'm oldest boy in both my mom and my dad's side of the family. So I'm basically, you know, the firstborn male on my mom's side, on my dad's side. So it was already a special position. And then we've got a huge family. I mean, we have this huge house, and there's 87 people that live under the same roof.
It's multiple
Families. There's like 4 or 5 generations that live together. We've got all kinds of lawyers, doctors. You know, my mom's a lawyer. My uncle's a lawyer. My great grandpa is actually one of the whenever there's a celebration for the state, the last few times, there's 3 chief guests of honor: the chief minister, the chief of police, and my great grandpa are on the stage.
Wow.
We have a huge construction company. We build all kinds of things, and then there's like all kinds of charities and different businesses that we run, and there's like multi-million-dollar businesses that we run, and it was basically that was I guess like more than any of that, I would say the biggest cost I would consider was my family, because I was very close to my family, and I loved my sister, and it was sad for me because my sister was getting married. She got married in August. I got saved in May, so I couldn't even go to her wedding, and that was probably like the most heartbreaking thing for me ever, because I had never ever imagined I would end up missing her wedding. That was like not even in my plan. So, like, all those things, I remember I was praying and I was telling Jesus, I was like, Jesus, like, what about my family? And I just kept reading the Bible. I didn't hear anything, didn't feel anything, nothing. I was just going. And I come to Luke, and Jesus is saying, whoever does not give up his mother or father or sister and brothers for me is not worthy of me. And I closed my Bible and I said, you're worthy of it all, Jesus, and I will give all of that up for you. And it just, after that, I never looked back. And, it is pretty sad. I'm getting married here in a few weeks, and it is sad for me because I'm not going to have anybody from my family.
Yeah.
But, Jesus...
Well, you will have family in a different sense.
That's what I was going to say. Jesus does replace,
yeah.
And, he's honestly blessed me with a great American family. I've got, they're great people here who love me, take care of me, part of their family, and as sad as it is, but it's the thing. It's like Jesus never ever said, follow me and you'll have $1 million and this beautiful wife and amazing house and no problems. Like, no, he said, if anything, you'll get 10 times of that with persecution.
Pick up your cross.
Pick up your cross, follow me. Don't be surprised if the world hates you. It hated me first. Like, why do people ignore all those verses? And it's just like people like me. I consider myself so blessed that I can actually, speak out, tell people about my faith, and protected and safe here. Imagine someone who becomes a Christian in a Muslim country where you're not even allowed to speak the name of Jesus or you get shot. Like, imagine believers, how they're living over there and what their life is.
But even in the United States, there are people that do give their life for Christ because they convert from Islam to Christianity.
Right.
Whether it's in Minnesota or Michigan, even you. I mean, you almost gave your life because if they would have caught you, I mean.
And I mean, like, I think 2.5 years ago in Champaign, a kid from Iran, he became a Christian, and 3 days later they found him dead in his apartment, and all of his roommates fled to Iran. They were just left. So, you know, like, it's in the United States. So that's the thing, is like, when you choose to follow Christ,
you give
it's to
everything.
Death. Yeah.
Everything.
You basically tell him, like, you're my everything.
Wow. It's just from a perspective of the American mind, you just don't think that, like, what, you know. Like, I think we're starting to see this more and more in the West, where there's more and more persecution. Nothing near the amount though.
It's definitely a different kind.
But they're starting to increase in that. It seems like you keep hearing news stories where England and Canada and the United States, people are being just slight bits of persecution. It's like, come on, wake up! But it's like nothing near like it is in Islamic countries and other places.
Yeah, it's very different over there.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, well, thanks, Sameed. It's a very interesting story, and I
pleasure.
appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly enjoy it, and if anything, I want to be a voice of hope that, you know, because that's the worst thing that happens when you become a Christian, is you feel you're all by yourself. Like, I didn't even know Nabil Qureshi existed 3 days after I became a Christian. I thought I was the first Muslim in the world who became a Christian.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like, you know, the other day somebody asked me, they were like, well, why is Islam growing so much, and all the converts to Islam are so many, whereas converts to Christianity are like, there's no one that, you know. I was like, well, here's the thing. When somebody becomes a Muslim, they're vocal about it because they don't fear death. But when somebody who's a Muslim becomes a Christian, 90% of them don't speak up because they're either going to lose their life, their family, or everything else that is dear to them. So a lot of believers just, you know, live in hiding. And
plus, it's not politically expedient, especially in the West, to say that you converted from Islam to Christianity. Right. It's the whole woke critical theory type of thing where, you know, Islam is considered almost like more of the oppressed group, and Christians have been considered now in the West as the oppressor group, and so the oppressed groups always get the preferences.
Well, I was hearing a story once, and I remember this random white dude just stood up and was like, "You're an Islamophobe," and walked out. I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? I'm just telling my story," you know. So it's just funny to me. But no, I mean, I appreciate you. I mean, I know we've wanted to do this for 1.5 years now, but I'm glad, you know, we were able to do this, and it's definitely fun.
There you have it. If you have thoughts or comments, feel free to share below. If this video brought value, feel free to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this on all your social media platforms. With that, go out and give your world Christ.